inhumane. In fact, if you were to ask any of the staff members, we would do away with trapping completely. And it's those topics that we don't like to discuss of what's found when those traps aren't serviced. Unfortunately, when animals are trapped, it requires an individual to respond to have those traps serviced, which means someone has to go out and remove the animal from those traps. As far as our department, when they get a call about trapped animals, that becomes a priority call because they don't know how long the animal's been there. And unfortunately, not everyone is as responsible as some of the individuals participating in the TNR program with cats where they're potentially trapping them themselves in their yard. On the neutering side, when females are spayed with feral cats, they lose their ability to hunt and to find food. The males lose their ability to fight. This often leads to death in those colonies that you heard mentioned before. Whenever surgery is performed, there's also housing costs once those animals have to go through the spay or neuter process. When they're released, they're required to be released in the same exact spot where they were picked up. And that does allow growing and freely increasing population in some areas, in some neighborhoods, when feral cats are being fed within a particular area. There are companies that service traps outside of our actual staff, but again, we have found animals where it's rained and the trap was underwater. And again, it requires human involvement in making that phone call, even if it's an outside company to service that trap, to call and have that trap serviced as soon as an animal is trapped. And the research that's been done, according to the state of Texas and the topics and training that staff go through, there's been no proven scientific studies that a TNR program works. We do have rescues, which is a lot of these great people that I've met at a meeting that are sitting behind me. These are people from Texas Paw Care, TCAP, Feral Cat Barn Program. We have a high respect for them. They're very passionate at what they do, and we believe that we could work effectively by working with them in other ways. The increases in operational costs that I mentioned would be more staff needed, more food, medical vet expenses, and sometimes owners take advantage of programs trying to get the service done for free rather than having to pay for it. Currently, we have a lack of space that would be needed for such program. And a large concern is what feral cats would bring into the shelter with the spread of additional disease to our adoptable cats that are in the shelter. Here are just some of the costs that we've put together. There's cost per day for housing. There's vet costs, the spay and neuter costs, which does not include pain medications or immunizations. There's the rabies vaccine. Something I would point out is a rabies vaccine also requires follow-up, so you would have to trap again in order to keep those same animals that might have been given a rabies vaccine to be vaccinated again. There's cat dens, litter boxes, additional bowls, shelter staff. We only put in the cost of potentially one additional staff that would be needed. A shelter expansion, and this is just to house additional cages to keep those cats separate from our adoptable cats. That does not include the cost of a surgery center which could be exponentially more expensive than this. So in looking at an initial cost, you're looking at approximately $460,114, and then recurring costs and expenses of $210,694. Again, that doesn't include medical supplies or all vaccinations that would be required. You'll hear that there are other local communities that support TNR. I just want to point out that there are many communities that support TNR by using one of these organizations that I've mentioned earlier. One city that should be on here is Richland Hills. So the city of Richland Hills works with Mid-City Community Cats that does their TNR program for them, but it is not an expense of the city. We called them and checked ourselves. Same thing with the city of Fort Worth. The city of Fort Worth does not put that expense on the back of the taxpayers. They work with these organizations as resources to help with the TNR programs. So there's no cities our size that are funding these programs through the city and the city expenses. So to summarize this for you, the TNR program would increase intake exponentially. We don't even spay or neuter our tame cats that we adopt out to families.
Oh, boy.
The cost to spay and
That's
neuter
bad.
feral cats imposes cost on citizens regardless of their involvement. And that should be the responsibility of those feeding the cats and wanting to be part of a TNR trap, neuter, spay program. Organizations representing these programs, as I said, they're good people, they have great intentions, they have huge hearts, and I appreciate what they do, not wanting any animal to perish. However, we believe that a TNR program should not be the cost of our tax-paying citizens. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Council, you have any questions? It's Javed Robert, Council.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we have a huge feral cat problem in Haltom City currently? I
Yep.
mean,
You do.
not where I currently live, we don't. Where I lived before, we did, but I don't think those were feral. I think they were just homeowners who did not want to keep them inside.
Yeah, so several years ago, there were hundreds being brought in at one time, and the number of those are lower. But if you were to implement a TNR, that number would go up exponentially in the number brought in. So that number definitely would change if you were to implement a program.
So where do feral cats get brought in from?
They're trapped from whoever traps those and brings them into the shelter.
So if the feral cats were trapped, spayed, neutered, they couldn't repopulate, would they eventually just go away then?
Just as Jacqueline mentioned earlier, it's a repetitive cycle, and so it never ends, because then you have additional cats, and it would never just go away, because you're not able to trap all the cats that's part of a colony.
Mm.
And so there's still going to be repopulation within those colonies, unfortunately.
Do we have a huge rodent problem in Haltom City?
Not that I've ever been aware of, Mr.
So,
Walker.
I guess it depends on where you live, because different people's got different ideas about that too, right? And can you back up a couple of slides?
Yes, sir.
And I see you're powering through this, I don't, good luck, I hope you get through the.
Sure. Wait till, you'll get your time to fill out a form.
Currently, and just going back to the trapping and things like that, I know from experience that you can get all kind of different animals in the trap regardless of your intention. Those I handled myself whenever that happened for me, but I do realize that can be a burden on staff also. But when a citizen calls and they've trapped a feral cat, and the cat goes to the shelter when animal control comes and picks it up. At that point, are they already spreading disease, even if we don't have this program?
I'm gonna have Jose speak to that because of the experience, either Jose or Josh. They can tell you a little bit about that.
So the disease part of it, we wouldn't know that.
State your name, please.
Jose Morales, Animal Service Supervisor. So with the disease part of it, we wouldn't know, Charlie, just because we don't have a vet on staff.
Correct.
And we don't have the resources to test every cat that comes in, especially feral cats, okay? Feral cats, we try to touch them. If we get a bite from a feral cat, then the fate for that feral cat is slim to none, okay? Because that bite, we don't know if he has calesi, which is transmittable to humans. We don't know if it's carrying pan-luke, which is cat leukemia, feline leukemia. We don't know, and if those two come into our shelter, that's immediate. Like that goes
Right.
quick. That blows up through the entire
Well, that's
colony.
kind of my point, that's already happening then. If you trap any animal that's, or any animal comes into the shelter that's got a disease, even without this program, that disease is present at the facility now.
Right, and due through our cleaning processes,
Yeah.
you know, we can keep them pretty clean, but some of the feral cats that will come in, especially with this TNR program, right now, the main thing that we get right now is adoptable cats. We've been getting that a lot, and we get them out as soon as we can, right? Our cat room stays, you know, we try to push those out as soon as we can. So with fosters, I mean, we get kittens all the time, especially kitten season is about to come up. We get kitten season. Myself, I'm one of the fosters that helps out, take them home, get them ready, and then bring them back and adopt them out, right? So keeping everything clean in the cat rooms is, you know, it's our priority. We clean every morning, we clean every afternoon. But if we see a cat that's sick, and we have our FIV vaccines whenever the tame cats come in, we vaccinate them. We'll vaccinate those when they come in, okay? But feral cats, we can't touch them. We can't grab them in order for us to vaccinate them to minimize and control that, you know, pass diseases and stuff like that.
Ms. Fausta, when you said that if cats are spayed or neutered, they lose their ability to hunt, where does that come from?
These are feral cats that we're referring to. And based on the research, you will find that information pretty readily.
So we did adopt a feral cat, as much as it would be tamed. We even had, y'all gonna be mad, but we even had the front claws taken off so to save our furniture and stuff. And he still hunted birds and stuff. So I don't know where that research would come from. I have not seen that in my own personal experience. So I'm just curious, is that something from the state website or something where that information comes
Cats
from?
are fixed.
Like, where you got it put it up here, so where did you get that from? Because that is worth researching.
Yes, I will send you that information.
So, thank you.
Father Gus. You go. Gus is speak.
The hard part is to, my comment, we don't wanna kill anything. We're all pet owners. We have to, we're a council, we have to look at what the information is, or what it costs not to kill something. It's hard. That's why we're asking for information from y'all. It's not we're not voting on this. We're looking for information based on what is presented to us. And we appreciate y'all coming here. We're not gonna close the door on anything. That's not the objective. The objective is to try and get the information. Cause I'll be damned if I put another dog down, couldn't do it. But we have to objectively look at what's presented before us and what y'all are talking about. And please understand that it's not a no, a yes. We're trying, this has been requested, it's finally here to talk to y'all. It's a hard subject. How do you take a living life? How do you offset taxpayers? This job was never easy. From being a city manager, an assistant city manager, to answer to taxpayers, to you guys that are animal lovers, to the people that work for the animal shelter. We see it on Facebook all the time about dogs that are loose, about cats that are loose. And I guess my plea is, and it's not political, but just let us hear you out. We're not gonna close the door on anything. We have to hear the statistics, we have to make hard decisions, and it sucks sometimes. I don't wanna be on my soapbox. A lot of y'all know me. It's a hard line. How do you control a life? How do you take a pet? You know, and I just wanna put it out there. It's not a yes or no. We're trying to get the info and see what we can do eventually or somehow. So I'm not trying to put y'all off. I just need to hear. I think what most of the council wants to hear is animal control, the facts that are presented to us, and the citizen input. Just, I can't, I don't wanna kill things. So, not a hard line stance. We're hearing what you guys are saying. We hear y'all also, Bethany and all y'all that are on the front line. These are the hard decisions that we're elected to do, and sometimes they really suck. I'll just put it out there, so I'll leave it at that. Thank y'all.
City manager.
Yeah, as far as staff, we're just reporting some costs to you guys and make decisions. We're just saying a lot of these other cities that sometimes people think they're doing it, but they're not. What they're working, but they are working with these other organizations like TCAP and Texas Paw Care and those kinds of places that do this. And our citizens can certainly do that, and we can certainly refer that. But if we start doing it, we just want to make sure you guys understand there is a cost, and that's a decision the council will make, and the staff will carry out whatever your decision is.
Thank you, sir, and Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Susan Soul.
Thank you, Mayor. Sedona, I know you already sat down, but my question, I guess, is these other organizations that the city manager just mentioned, the list, can you go back to the list of those that you said, the cities, our surrounding cities, that you said they are doing something, but they're using these organizations to do that?
Yes, and the one that's not listed there that we know of that Richland Hills uses is Mid-City Community Cats.
Can you go back to that slide that listed the surrounding cities? So the ones at the top, you say they're doing TNR, but they have full-time veterinarians on staff.
That's correct.
That are doing that.
Arlington, Grand Prairie, and Irving, however, Irving has been on a TNR, they had their TNR program suspended currently.
They haven't.
Due to cost and staffing.
Okay, and then all of these down
They're doing
here, these other cities, and probably more like our city, that are not doing TNR, but are they using
Yes.
the other organizations so that they're doing it, but the city employees are not doing it.
That's correct.
Okay, and so are we looking into that? I mean,
And do you mean utilizing those?
are we looking at that as a possibility for us to do, as an option?
That's what staff recommends we do.
Okay.
I mean, we've met with those groups and, like I said, they're great at the services they offer, but that's what staff recommends we do, is work with these, have that contact information out there for our citizens to be able to utilize those programs with these organizations.
Will our staff be involved in that whole process though? I mean, is that are we gonna need an additional person or a partial person to handle the coordination with
So
those organizations?
We would refer those citizens that are inquiring about it directly to those organizations. And I'm sure when some of them speak, you'll be able to hear what they offer. I mean, some even offer transportation into tracks, so forth. So, we would be involved by making sure we refer anyone needing that service to any of those.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilor Tiffany Chandler.
Hi, Donna. I'm glad you didn't sit down, so I didn't have to make you get up
Oh,
again.
it's okay.
Okay, you said it was $460,000 to initially get started. If we were to budget this, where would that come from? Where would that money come from?
It would be in the general fund.
It would be in the general fund.
Yes.
Do we have $460,000 sitting in the general fund to spend on this, or?
We would take that from somewhere else, so
Can you
council
give
would
some
decide
examples?
during budget season where that money would come from.
Has anybody up here been to the animal shelter? You? Have you guys been back there where the cats stay? Did you notice it's a pretty small space, right? So, and we are a growing city, so we're getting a lot more animals, coming in, and, I saw their space where they're sitting, their office, they have 4 people in there, so we're just outgrowing this animal shelter, and it's an adorable animal shelter. If you haven't been down there, you should definitely check it out. It's really cute, but we are definitely outgrowing it. And so that and where the money would come from are my only issues. I have no problem with TNVR. But it's costly, and we're gonna have to figure out where the money's gonna come from if we're going to do that. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilor Don Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been told that it's actually, if you feed feral cats, that you can be cited and fined. I know that used to be the policy. I wonder, is that still the policy?
There's an ordinance, at the moment, you cannot feed feral cats. Reason being, same thing, you get wildlife in, you're putting food out on your front porch, you're putting food, out on the back porch. I've seen a couple places where there's food dumped out on the side of the street, cat food, and that what attracts coyotes, it attracts raccoons, it attracts possums, it attracts foxes. And when we get that issue going and, Bobby Joe takes his dog out midnight because he's crying because he wants to go outside and use the restroom, and you get a raccoon that comes up and attacks your dog, and that takes it into a whole new scenario where we're having to go out there as officers and have a confinement period of 90 days. That costs to the owner of the dog because there's wildlife coming into the city, because there's food laying out on the street, it's laying out on the front porches, laying out on the back porches, right? So, and then sometimes whenever a couple people that I've heard are saying, well, I haven't seen my cats in a couple of days. Well, that's because there's wildlife coming around. Wildlife is gonna scare all those cats away. They're gonna stay away for a couple of days, then you stop feeding, and you see those cats come back because the wildlife left, right? So if you put food out, you're inviting that wildlife in. You're inviting it, and especially right now with all the construction going on, we're taking wooded area, taking it away. Those wildlife that were living, those coyotes, those raccoons, those possums that were living in that wooded area, what are they doing? They're pushing into our city. They're pushing into the city, so right now they're finding trash, and then they smell the food. Of course, they're gonna go over there to that front porch. They're gonna go over there to that back porch. So yes, in regards to feeding, it's not an ordinance. You cannot feed.
So is your department actively giving citations to people who you catch feeding feral cats?
We like to educate. We like to go out there and educate, speak to the people. Like, we don't wanna go out there and people feel like, oh, you're coming to harass me, you're gonna harass me. We're here to provide superior customer service to every resident of Haltom City. And when we go out there, our best thing to do to have a good relationship with them is to educate them. Educate them on what's going on and what can happen. Wildlife, that's a big thing. Wildlife, having raccoons in. Animal services started way long ago for rabies control. Rabies control. When we invite those rabies vectors into the city because we're putting food out, that becomes an issue. And we have to go back out there and, you know, especially when we have a wildlife on a dog attack, or, you know, that happens and Bobby Joe stuck his hand in it trying to separate his dog from that raccoon and he got bit. Post-exposure vaccines are very expensive, very painful. So, you know, that's, you know, we like to educate for that main reason. We like to go out there and let them know, like, hey, this is what can happen. You know, of course, like if they keep doing it at that point, you know, we're gonna have to take a different step and move forward with either citations or, you know, trying to figure something else with it.
So you do actively give out citation? That's my question.
For that main purpose, for
Yes.
feeding? No, we haven't. We like to educate.
So you actually go out and try to educate the people on
Correct.
what you just said, and you do that rather than giving citation?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Right.
Chairman, go ahead.
Yes, sir. I hate for you to have to stand back up, but
No problem, sir.
while I'm sitting down. Are you differentiating between feral cats and, I know what feral cats are. I've had those run through my yard. You
Right.
can't get within 10 feet of them. But there's also cats all over that you can pick up and hold. They just happen to be outdoor cats. You differentiate between those two, or?
Well,
I've had that discussion with the chief before about what he's calling a feral cat.
well, at that point, if we have something that we can hold, and someone's bringing that in, we ask that main question of, have you seen this cat come out of anybody's house? Do we know the owner? 9 times out of 10, they're like, yo, well, yeah, it's my neighbor's cat. But he doesn't take care of it. He doesn't like his cat, he keeps it outside. Well, sir, in Texas, after feeding for 3 days, that's feeding harboring, you become the owner, right? So we have to go out there and speak to the neighbor. Say, hey, we're holding your property here. You need to come reclaim your cat, right? And at that point, we let them know about our stray animal law, our stray animal ordinance, and let him know, hey, if this happens again, your cat comes in again, then there's gonna be, you know, different, we might have to issue you citations because it's just like a dog. If a dog's at large, we have that same conversation, right? So, feral cats, you know, there's some that are owned, and most of the time, like I said, we'll figure out the owner when people bring him in. Oh yeah, he's super friendly. We were able to put him in the kennel by ourselves. Okay, who's the owner? Your neighbor? Okay, we're gonna go out there, speak to your neighbor. We're gonna have that conversation with your neighbor, let him know that, hey, your cat, your responsibility, you're the owner, it's your property, put it inside. Just like everything else. If you're gonna bring him out, just like a dog, it's gotta be on leash. You gotta figure out how to keep him contained at all times.
Thank you, Sue.
I think you just answered my question. I don't agree with that.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I will, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Allow the